have the opportunity to talk with and ask some questions to these wonderful performers. I also want us to acknowledge again Jeffrey, the director of the play, who's standing behind here. Jeffrey. So we'll be thinking about questions or ideas. Just by way of introduction, my name is Paul Ortiz. I serve as the director of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, and I'm a history professor at the University of Florida. But in an earlier life, I served in war also. I'm a combat veteran from Central America in one of America's many undeclared wars. In the mid-1980s, I served with 7th Special Forces in the region. And the chance to hear these stories is really one of the most remarkable intellectual experiences of my life. And I want to thank especially the Florida Humanities Council for making this possible. I want to thank Patricia Putnam from Florida Humanities, who's here. Please give her a round of applause. This is the kind of public programming, I think, that really helps our communities. We learn, we heal, we talk to each other. You know, there's this story about the Vietnam War, how veterans came home. We didn't listen to them in contrast to World War II. But I grew up, I'm just old enough to have a lot of family members who were World War II veterans. And in many cases, they were not listened to either when they returned home in the 1940s, early 1950s. So listening, talking, dialogue is really important. So I want to also mention that we're filming the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program is actually filming this evening's performance. We'll have a copy of that ready probably early in the new year. And so if you want a copy of that, please contact us at UF, and we'll be happy to give you a copy of that. The Proctor program also actively interviews veterans from all eras of military service. So if you're interested in, if you have a family member, if you yourself would like to be interviewed, if you're a spouse of military, we'd love to interview you as well. But now, let's turn the floor over to some questions and comments. Well, I think we have, Jeffrey, about 15 to 20 minutes. Yeah. And Michael is going to give us, you heard Michael's voice. Let's give Michael a round of applause. Michael's going to give us the one question alert, and then, but at any time during the Q&A, if you want to get up and stretch your legs and go out in the lobby or use the restroom, please feel free to do so. Don't feel as if you have to stay, but let's open the floor up. Any questions or comments or ideas for the performers?
I've got a question. I moved here as a young boy, and there was a court case going on called the Gainesville 8, and I always remember that as being a young boy and knew your name back then, and I just wondered whatever became of that. Was that because of your involvement, and do you are you in touch with the other 7 people that were in that trial with you?
We were found not guilty.
What have they done?
Say again?
What have they done? I'm a new Gainesville person. I don't know.
We were charged with conspiracy to disrupt the 1972 Republican Convention. Oh. We were members of Vietnam Veterans Against the War. We had our trial in Gainesville. It was called the Gainesville 8, and we were found not guilty.
And the other people on that trial with you, have y'all kept in touch, or?
Some of us are still in touch with each other. Okay. 2 of our members are deceased, so there's now 6 of us. Okay.
We did an oral history project, by the way, of the Gainesville case. We just actually, coincidentally, I'm glad you asked the question, we released the first podcast today that had just come out in the Proctor iTunes podcast series. And so if you're linked into iTunes, you can actually subscribe to that and hear the first part of that story. Yeah. Questions, ideas? Yes.
I'm Clyde Kiger, no Sue from class some time ago. I stood up in front of it here because Sue, you have me by a couple of years, but not me. And so I was here during all this too. I was young enough and old enough to remember Diem Bien Phu and what took place during that period. And then after that, and after that, and after that, all these events that have been described during my lifetime here. And I became a professor and taught resource economics to Sioux along the way there. And I'm so proud to see that. I was around when what was happening in the case there before. I came here in the mid-50s there and been here since. And really what my thought is here, it's like a fabric. The younger people, I haven't met them. I'm concerned about school at this point. I immediately went to chat with you because I had no idea I ever go to college or anything. My favorite cousin was killed in Korea as a draftee, and it just shook me up. And that began to flavor things. And then a whole series of things beyond that. It's a fabric that I see here coming across, people I know all around and that. And I so appreciate y'all offering it to us here this way, because it allows us to understand that this does take place. I don't have any solutions, but thank you for everybody to being here and all the people who came. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm interested in the trauma that you experienced. And I'm especially interested in Mr. Johnson, whose trauma was brought about by our society. And I'm wondering how...
Well, you know, I was on a ship, and that ship would go out 100 miles out, and it was, again, 1,500 to 2,000 people, only 250 blacks was on that ship. And again, the setting was 1972, and segregation and issues of race were still kind of really hot in the air. And so the people that mostly was on board was guys from the southern states. Well, you had people from New York, Chicago. But the mentality of the people on the ship basically had not changed. The only thing that had changed was somebody made a piece of paper saying, you got these civil rights. The people that came from Louisiana, they didn't get nothing about that. So I would get, you know, derogatory remarks made regularly. You know, I would get jobs that would be really terrible jobs. I would be told stories that the ratings that I would look for to try to move myself up was not available to me. And there was just numerous other issues that just kept coming up. And people just plainly wouldn't associate with another black guy on the ship. It was just terrible.
I'd like to continue with the question about whether the trauma is experienced by non-military in a country that has sometimes the same kind of insults are experienced by young people, by teenagers, by society in general, and in some way it's concentrated in a military environment.
Yes,
but
sir.
whether it has applications more broadly.
Yes, I appreciate all five of you being up there because you're paying an emotional price. I'm a Vietnam veteran and a counselor myself, and a lot of times when people say, well, we want you to talk about it. Well, when you talk about it, you start having nightmares, start getting nervous like I am. And so I appreciate all five of you offering yourself to help educate the rest of the community here. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just want to follow up on his comment question. So for you two in Iraq and Afghanistan, have racial tensions subsided? I mean, the military is supposed to be colorblind. What's your experience?
I didn't have any. We were all just one, you know. You have to.
And even African Americans in your.
Yeah. Because you gotta fight with that person. You go to combat. You gotta be able to trust them, and they've got to be able to trust you in return. You know, so I think today it's better than probably it was when Rafe was in. It's changed a lot.
Right. And in Afghanistan?
On deployment, it was the same experience. We all had to look after each other because the location that we were, we had to. We just had to, even if we didn't want to, even if we didn't like the other person, we had to. But even if we didn't like them, we still fought with them. It didn't matter who it was. The reason being was because the closest air support we got would have taken 20 and 25 minutes. Jalalabad was about a 2-hour helicopter ride south, and that was the nearest support that we would be able to have. So we had to trust each other. But my experience was a little bit different coming back home. We call it garrison. When we're back in garrison and we're just doing our 9 to 5, a lot of the times I noticed that the people were assigned to do jobs, maintenance on trucks, check systems, whatever it is that we were doing that day. I noticed that it was mostly the people that actually showed up most of the time to work were the white guys and the Latinos. And very few times did I ever see the other guys, the other African American guys actually there. A lot of times it was like I would run into one and I would say, "Hey, how come you weren't at detail this morning?" "Oh, I was doing something else." But then later on, another one will tell me, "Oh no, we were out in this guy's house." And, yeah. So it was kind of like that a lot of the times.
Questions? Yes.
This is a question for Scott. This is back to what was the Nixon administration trying to do? If they don't want somebody's message to get out, it seems like the worst thing they can do is to try to prosecute them, because now they're the focus of getting a lot of news publicity. So why was the Nixon administration prosecuting the Gainesville 8 and other anti-war groups instead of just trying to ignore them?
So I'm not sure I heard all the
Why
question.
was they trying to prosecute the Gainesville 8?
I really can't tell you why they did whatever they did. I can just tell you what they did. I can't tell you why. I have no idea why. I thought they were just trying to shut us up.
Part of it was that I think, Scott, you've said elsewhere too that, Vietnam Veterans Against the War was a very unique anti-war organization. I mean, it wasn't the anti-war movement on the campus. It wasn't the anti-war movement in Berkeley. It was, combat veterans and other veterans really coming together, giving testimony. And frankly, the U.S. government was really scared and pretty frightened that you had this really amazing group of people who could give firsthand testimony about what was really happening, right?
So before there was Vietnam Veterans Against the War, there was an anti-war movement, and the government would say those people are communist sympathizers. They're cowards. They're not willing to serve their country. They don't know what they're talking about. When we formed Vietnam Veterans Against the War, they couldn't say we were cowards. They couldn't say we weren't willing to serve our country. They couldn't say we didn't know what we were talking about. So they had to change their tactics. They were unable to discredit us. And our country always wraps the flag and the troops around our crap. And nobody's going to say anything because it's wrapped in the flag and wrapped with the troops. But when the troops are out there leading the marches saying the war is wrong, that presented a problem for the government.
Sure did.
I know this wasn't timed this way, but just hearing the stories and thinking about the elections and the current situation that the country is in and heading in, I can't help but feel there's maybe a common thread that can be spoken on between each of your services and the war idea of the enemy being dehumanized, and therefore, I feel like you're sort of coming from different battles and different strains of things, but in these battles, there's always this sort of dehumanization of the enemy to make them more fightable. And I feel like a lot of that sort of rhetoric is being brought home right now with Muslims and Mexicans and sort of this. And I'm thinking about your experiences because I feel like you've come home and you've grown out of that and you're living a life and sort of dwelling on how your experiences in those combat zones and those experiences. And there may be something to be spoken on our current experience. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Can you, if I understood what you're saying, partially is, can you reflect on your experiences given the current climate? You know, a lot of
Iraqis to be able to fight them, or a hatred of the Vietnamese that's embedded into the bases and the preparation for these wars.
I think in our training, like when we grow up, our parents teach us certain values. You're not supposed to steal, you're not supposed to hurt other people, you're not supposed to lie. When you go to war, you're allowed to do those things. And so they have to recondition you. And part of that reconditioning is the dehumanization of the enemy. That's why you're able to do those things to them, because they are so dehumanized in the training.
We have time for one more question, and we can continue in the lobby, and we want to get folks home at a reasonable hour. Yes, sir, you'll be the last question.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I came up during that era, and there was, I went to a segregated school, and when I got into the military, you know, I saw a lot of this in the military. But when I got in Vietnam, it's a whole different story. You are family, you know. I was in infantry, you know, I have medals, and, you know, but when I came back, it was the same story. You know, what I left, and then when you go into war, you are family. There's no black and white. The only thing you are interested in is survival. I was infantry, 1st Cavalry Division. And when I came back home, I came back to the same thing that I left. Bias, segregationists, you know, because they still hadn't really integrated the school. When they did integrate the school, that was chaos, you know. So war, when you go into war, well, I was sort of like a pacifist. I didn't believe in hurting anyone, but the way they train you, they brainwash you. They have to do this for your survival. That's the way I viewed it. Because if I wasn't brainwashed into protecting myself, you know, I might have not made it. But that's the training mechanism the military enforce on you for your own survival during war. So, you know, you can look at it from both angles. So, you know, that's my cousin. He asked me to come here. And, you know, I suffer from PTSD also. I was Baker Act because I was on the verge, I didn't know what to do, you know, from the nightmares and sleep deprivation. So I've got some help. I need more help. I know, because I can't stay with anyone now. You know, I have to be in an apartment by myself. PTSD, when we got out there, was no treatment for it. They finally got some treatment for it. You know, I lost a job behind PTSD because they didn't know how to identify it. So the first thing they say, you crazy. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I remember you. I was a student at Santa Fe. during your trial here in Gainesville. I remembered you. We about the same age. I remembered you because I was a student at Santa Fe. I remember I remember the trial. It was at not the present courthouse, but the one. I remember that. I remember it vividly. Thank you.
Well, let's have another round of applause for our performers. One more performance, tell your friends. Please remember to fill out the surveys. It's very important to get feedback. Performers loved it, and Florida Humanities loves it also. Thank you very much.